This is the Spirit and Wellness Show. News and information from a higher perspective. With your host, Harry Wilkinson.
Yes, hello, and welcome to the Spirit and Wellness Show. I am your host, Harry Wilkinson, and welcome to the big show today. We're going to be talking about happiness. What does it mean? And is everybody happy? We are going to, as usual, be taking a look at some of the days and weeks events, happenings in the world, politics, the media, education, technology, and we're going to be looking at them from a higher perspective. From the perspective, I call it a spiritual perspective. You could also call it a metaphysical perspective. The concept basically is that within the context of these stories that we create in our world, and we create them ourselves at sort of a metaphysical level. We create these stories that we may experience and reconnect to that which we are truly, which is oneness, which is connectedness, which is divine mind. That's a term I like to use and used several times on this show. So it's not a religious perspective at all, though we do talk about religion. But it's a point of view that says that there's something more going on here. And let's take a step back. Let's disconnect the buttons that get pushed and go into these stories and see what they have to tell us, or what these stories that we're telling are telling us about ourselves. So I do that. It's an important thing, a skill that I'm developing here for myself, and sharing it via podcast with whoever happens to want to listen. It's the skill of taking what you might initially think of as difficult news to hear, and looking at it from a different perspective. And it's an important skill to have, because much of what programmers and editors, news editors, choose to present on the news networks and in print and online and everything else are stories that have to do with violence, death, tragedies of some kind. The reasoning behind this, they say, is that if they present stories of positive news, people don't listen to them. People don't watch them. And what seems to be the truth here is that there is a certain arresting quality that these news stories that have big punchlines to them have. So yes, you're going to get people's attention when you tell the story of something blowing up, or as we have here today about a protest up here in Baltimore, Maryland, that went violent. Well, now we've got people's attention. Yeah, that will get people's attention. Just like if you light a firecracker in the middle of Times Square, or right outside your door, or on the street corner, people are going to want to know what happened. People are going to look at what happened. But the fact of the matter is that stories that have something positive and something substantial to them, and something that helps people to learn and grow, those are the stories that people stay interested in. Those are the stories that people will come back to. And that is the difference between the thinking that goes on between the desire to get big ratings, which is the very short term, what were the ratings today, and that translates into dollars and cents for news networks. And that's the difference between that and a longer term vision, where you have increasing numbers of people turning to your, news network or your website because what you tell them has resonance with them and brings them back. It's within the economic environment that these networks exist in, and that we exist in. It's a difficult sell, to say the least. Fortunately, we live in a time when we have all kinds of alternative media, such as podcasts and other forms, where you can do this, where you can present these things, and in a different way, in a different form, that's not as dependent upon big money corporations advertising dollars to get you to the next day. And that's more and more what I think people are going to come to rely on. I know increasingly they are, particularly younger people, are turning to less big name forms of information, and they're turning to bloggers and other websites that they have learned to trust, and that are developing their own sort of niche in the business. Probably the most high profile that you've probably heard of might be the Huffington Post, which started as a blog and really has developed into something that a lot of people find to be a trustworthy source of information, and that will look at stories that you might not necessarily see on the other networks. So it's an interesting time that we live in because of the changing, constantly changing dynamics of the media and of the forms of communication that we are turning to. And so I think it's a great time, as a matter of fact. Even as these sort of the big giants of the media begin to calcify, if you will, the new forms are able to run rings around them, and that's, I think, good for the average person. Well, enough said on my musings about the media business side. Let's talk about what's being talked about in the media for a moment. And then we're going to turn to some healthier things. We're going to turn to looking at antioxidants and their place in your diet and what things you ought to focus on for antioxidants. There's a lot of misinformation about these things, as there have been, and I plan to do a show on dietary supplements as opposed to vitamins and what all that means, because a lot of people turn to these dietary supplements that have extraordinary claims that are not particularly valid. So we're going to talk about that probably in future shows, but we'll talk about it a little bit on this one as well. But internationally, there was a earthquake in Nepal, and quite a devastating one, as a matter of fact. It was, let me see if I can find what the actual statistics are on it. It is the biggest earthquake in 80 years in that region. And rescue efforts are still ongoing. So far, it seems that the number they have here is 2,300 people have died. As a result of this earthquake in Nepal. Now, if you're not familiar with Nepal and Kathmandu, which is in Nepal, it's in Southeast Asia. And it's island, it's island territory surrounded by water. There are mountains in Nepal too, but they are surrounded by water. Kathmandu is the capital of Nepal, and Nepal borders Tibet and India on the east side of it, and Tibet on the west side of it. And the center of this earthquake was near Kathmandu and another town called Pokhara in Nepal. And so the Mount Everest and the range of mountains there are very nearby that. And as I've said, it's very close to the ocean. So a lot of people, I would imagine that most of the people who died in this quake were probably living on the coast of the country. But let's take a look. There were Mount Everest had avalanches after the earthquake, and 70 people have been killed by that. Rescue missions and aid are starting to come, but I'm sure have a lot further to go. Aftershocks have been felt in India as well as Bangladesh, and Everest had more avalanches. So it was, okay, there it is. It's a 6.7 magnitude tremor. That's a big one. And military helicopters are coming in with relief supplies. And there's a lot of rubble. Aftershocks. A lot of the mountain roads are blocked by landslides, so it's hard to get access to a lot of some of these areas. And they're still, working on things like the death toll. This is, of course, going to be an ongoing relief situation. And something that, it's one of those, stories. It's one of those things that, again, as I say, whenever we talk about disasters of this nature that kind of galvanize everyone, really bring us together in a way, and help us to understand our connections with one another. When you reach out and you look at these pictures, and they're quite. If I'm stammering here, that's why, because I'm looking at these pictures, and they're quite stunning, and your heart goes out, and you realize that The ability that we have to come together and support each other through these things is remarkable. And we realize, when we see this happening to other people, we feel it. We feel what that must be like. And, or I think most of us do. Maybe some don't. But in any case, it makes us feel connected to something outside of our own, particular worries and concerns. So, very, very. I think this is a really powerful event. I'm still taking it in. So I'm for sure going to be talking about it further on down the line. The other story that I thought was something that got my attention, particularly since we were talking about this, I was talking about it last week on the show, and how one of the things that has come out of that social protest and unrest period that we've gone through since 2012 has been, in this country, the emerging awareness of relationships with police in low-income areas, particularly with minorities and African Americans. And here's a story that, again, is in the news. Freddie Gray, a man from Baltimore, died very mysteriously in police custody. He was apparently taken into a van by police officers who took him into custody, and he had some sort of, I think, asthma attack where he had trouble breathing, and he told them about that. And by the time the van arrived and he came out of the van, he had died, and it was apparently something to do with, he had stopped breathing, and it was apparently something that happened to his spinal cord. Because the deputy commissioner, Jerry Rodriguez, told the press that Mr. Gray suffered a medical emergency while he was being transported in the van, and that he was immediately transported to shock trauma via medic. He arrived in critical condition. Apparently suffered a very tragic injury to his spinal cord, which resulted in his death. Mr. Gray's spine was 80% severed at his neck, and we don't know where or when that injury was sustained, but it certainly wasn't sustained before he got in that van. That much we know. Because when he was placed in the van, he was able to talk, and he was upset. And when he was taken out of the van, he could not talk, and he could not breathe. Apparently, he had 3 broken vertebrae and an injured voice box, and then went into a coma and died. Those injuries would have to have been inflicted by significant force, according to the Baltimore Sun. And that the force would have to have been similar to the impact from a car accident. So the police officers have been suspended. That's not news, though. I mean, that is fairly standard procedure. when any death occurs. He asked for an inhaler at one point before they put him in the van. The officers put him in leg irons because they determined that he had become irate. So, it's another one of these stories that is quite upsetting. But again, the awareness is there. Protests are going on now over his death. And unfortunately, they had an incident of violence Saturday night. It came from basically young kids who were involved in the protest, and then it got out of hand. It's a story that fits so well in this discussion, or this awareness that we have now, because it apparently wasn't clear to the police commissioner why Gray was stopped by police, but the officers made eye contact with Gray and the other man before the pair took off. So apparently he was with another person. The Baltimore police officers made eye contact with him, and he fled unprovoked, seeing the police officers. And that he was arrested without force or incident, but there's video of them, or they were seen, Baltimore police are seen pinning the man to the ground, which would seem to me to indicate force, but okay. So he ran, basically, when the officers made eye contact. And that's why he was arrested, but there's no law against running. So this is really going to be another one of those cases, I'm sure. So, well, I think we'll move on. I'm sure we'll be coming back to that story in due time. But let's now go and take a look at our wellness portion of the Spirit and Wellness Show, which has to do today with antioxidants. So what's an antioxidant? Well, an antioxidant are basically vitamins that are in food that help to clear oxidation. And this, you want to do that because they will counter oxidative stress, and that helps to boost the immune system. And by boosting your immune system, you decrease your risk of infection and getting sick. So antioxidant vitamins, the best source, come from the diet. And they come from fruits, vegetables, some beverages, and some nuts. So here's a list of 15, and this list is published by the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And these are things that you can, find in your grocery store and use in varying ways. So number 1 is blackberries. Number 2, walnuts. So if you like walnuts, you can sprinkle them on your salad. Strawberries, I put those on my breakfast cereal at times when they're available. Artichokes. I don't particularly care for artichokes, but okay. Cranberries. Now you can eat cranberry juice, but if you do the fresh whole cranberries, I think you'll get a better result. Coffee. That's interesting. Coffee is an antioxidant. And I only have 1 cup of coffee during the day, and that's in the morning. A lot of folks have coffee throughout the day. Last I heard, I think they were saying that 2 to 3 cups of coffee is okay, is good. That's too much for me. It makes me jumpy, but others, can handle that. But more than that, apparently, is the caffeine is not good for you. Number 7 is raspberries. Again, something I like to put on my breakfast cereal. Pecans. That's something you can sprinkle on your salad. Blueberries. A tasty treat for dessert or for breakfast. Ground cloves. That's interesting. Cloves is a seasoning that you can use, when you're cooking. That can perhaps boost the antioxidant level of whatever you're cooking. Grape juice. Unsweetened baking chocolate. Yeah, unsweetened, like those chips that you make the chocolate chips from. Yeah, those have antioxidant properties to them. Cranberry juice, sour cherries, and good old red wine. So, if you are looking to increase your antioxidants, you can drink some wine. Maybe not too much, but... All right, so those are your 15 antioxidant foods that you can find in your grocery store. So now we're going to talk about what the title of this episode actually has been all about, which is happiness. And is everyone happy? Is anybody happy? And should they be? And what is happiness? I think that's the biggest deal to talk about. Because if you ask someone, what would make you happy? Well, they might say something like, having the love of my life, winning the lottery and never having to worry about money again, or being famous, being free to do whatever I want to do. And that's basically what it comes down to. Whenever we see any of these things, what we're talking about is, the freedom to live the way we want to live. And the thing about happiness is, and it's interesting, there's always been debates in the Christian community about, did Jesus talk about happiness? He apparently didn't. He never mentioned happiness. And there's a question as to, why did he ever talk about being happy? That's something we can get into later. But, being happy is, I think we have to think about what that means. Now, is happiness this giddy, excited, joyful feeling? That's what you would describe as happiness. And then the opposite of that are things that we think of as negative, like heartbreak, depression, confusion, and anger. But really, happiness is living and experiencing all of those emotions, but experiencing them in a way that in which we don't tell stories about bad, good, negative, positive, but that we experience them and we evolve and grow. And that has a lot to do with what I'm talking about with these news stories, and looking at them from a higher perspective, looking at them from the idea that it's all part of who and what we are, and it's all part of our happiness. Even when we have tragedies like the earthquake, when you live from a point of view that says that we're more than just our bodies, it really makes a difference. It truly makes a difference. And remembering that makes a difference. So there's this article here that's very interesting. And in it, the author is saying that, the meaning of life isn't to be happy. It's to truly live, evolve, and grow. And to truly live means experiencing all qualities and expressions of life, even the so-called negative ones. But I would say that is happiness. That's a deeper happiness. There's a superficial happiness where, you have the, let's say you have the, job that you want, and you have the, good marriage and family and all of those things. And, that's as far as you think about. And if you stop there and accept that, that's a certain level of happiness. But that's the kind of happiness that changes. That's the kind of happiness that, can morph into something different. Because when one of those things changes, well, then your happiness gets thrown up into the air. Or if you just get bored and all of a sudden you feel restless and wanting something else, well, that also disturbs the happiness. So experiencing that full range of emotions, getting involved in the challenges that help us experience things, experience lessons, those are the things that truly make us happy. Because remember, we are in this world. We've created this world. We've created this version of ourselves as something lesser than what we truly are. And in that sense, it's a game. It's a challenge, like a video game. You've created yourself as some character that has flaws and weaknesses, and is a failure, or is weak, or isn't bright, and has to overcome challenges. We are, of course, none of those things at our highest level, but we create that. We take on the persona of that in order to experience these things. So much as you might watch a movie and, feel a range of emotions as you begin to get involved and care about the characters, and you may feel sadness, you may feel anger, you may feel happiness, you may feel humor. And those are all part of the movie-going experience, and that's what makes the movie-going experience interesting and fun. But you don't. When you're watching in a play out in a movie, you're able to experience all of those things without being stuck in them. And that perhaps may be a way to look at it in your own life, as sort of like a movie or a game in which all of these things are taking place, and the joy of it is experiencing all of it, even the so-called negative things. So that is an awful lot about what this show has been about and will continue to be about. And as I explore it myself and learn more myself, I'm still learning, then I certainly share my perspective and my thoughts about it with you, should you choose to listen to the show, which I greatly appreciate. And hopefully we'll expand our listener base as we continue to grow. Until then, see you next week. Have a